This is St. John's. It's the capital city of the Atlantic Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's pretty here. Our people are known for being some of the sweetest and funniest people in the country. And we have a mostly well-earned reputation for giving you the shirt off our back if you're in need. But piss us off, there's no coming back from that. This place has history that runs as deep as any place in North America. We have stories for days, and I try to share some of them in my videos. I try to come up with interesting ones that I figure most people don't know about, like the story of the Harvey family from Isle of Mort down on the southwest coast. But there's a story about another Harvey family from town that I feel like used to be more well known, and maybe some people are just either forgetting, or a lot of people who were born well after this incident happened maybe just don't know about it. So something happened in St. John's nearly 35 years ago that has shaped a funny little part of Newfoundland culture. It might not be a super important thing, but if you're here, you definitely notice it. Newfoundland and Labrador is Pepsi country. And this is why. A little background for you if you're enjoying the pretty footage that you're looking at, but you've never really given a crap about the cola wars. So Coca-Cola has pretty much always dominated the market for soft drinks, with Pepsi coming in second place. Sometimes a close second, and sometimes not so close. Now, this isn't a video about the specific stats and figures related to the competition between these two corporations. So if at any point Pepsi actually jumped into the lead, cool. But basically, Coke has always been number one, Pepsi number two. But I didn't realize this because growing up, Mom was a Pepsi woman and our house was a Pepsi house, to the point where if we went out and she ordered a Pepsi and the server said, "Is Coke okay?" she'd have water. On top of this, I came up as a little kid in the 80s and early 90s, watching a lot of 80s and early 90s TV, and I swear to God, Pepsi and Diet Pepsi commercials shaped my childhood. Michael Jackson with Carlton before Carlton was Carlton. Michael J. Fox breaking out of and back into his own apartment to get his hot new neighbor a Diet Pepsi. Cindy Crawford and Ray Charles. Who can hear either of those songs playing in your head right now? You know what I'm talking about. Crystal Pepsi. Like, Coke may have dominated the actual market, but Pepsi TV ads gotta be recognized somewhere as some of the best commercials of all time, right? Anyway, so somewhere around the time Cindy Crawford stepped out of that Lamborghini at that dusty old gas station to grab a tin of Pepsi, Newfoundland's economy was sinking into the abyss. Don't get me wrong, our economy has always been one of a few highs here and there and many, many lows. But as late as around 1988, Clyde Wells was calling for every mother's son to come home to Newfoundland based on a strong economy. But it was all bullshit, and within 2 years, serious alarm bells were ringing. And within 2 years of that, the only major driver of the Newfoundland economy, the cod fishery, shut down. Literally shuttered overnight. Tens of thousands of people thrown out of work in a province of less than 600,000 people. It was catastrophic. There's no other way to describe it. Look at that. Your turn.
You have a two?
Go fish.
I want popcorn again tonight. Ooh, 2 bags of two.
But in many ways, it wasn't a surprise. Even as a preteen youngster, I knew that times were very hard. I didn't even have a grass is greener frame of reference of some other place. I just knew that people here were struggling. And I heard the news people talking about how there's no fish and the foreigners are taking the few fish that are here. This was all on the go for a few years, even before the moratorium was announced. My dad was a mailman, and my mom worked at the Confederation building. Dad started work early in the morning and finished up around the time I would get home from school. I would go with him for the ride to pick Mom up from work at the end of her day most days. We lived in Mount Pearl, and this was before the Outer Ring Road was built. So we took Kenmount Road as far as Pippi Place by the big post office. We turned there and then onto O'Leary Avenue before eventually jumping onto Princeville Parkway. I can't remember exactly when this was, but I've been trying to find info, and I've been able to pinpoint that it was at least at some point in 1991 when we would see big groups of men, and there might have been women too, but it was definitely only men that I remember seeing, quote unquote, on strike on O'Leary Avenue. Remember, I said my dad was a mailman, so I knew what a strike looked like, even as an 11-year-old, but Dad explained that this wasn't exactly a strike that we were driving past. It was similar, but it was different. All of these men lost their jobs, and they didn't do anything wrong. They worked at the Coke plant, and Coke decided that they didn't want to have a plant in Newfoundland anymore, so all of these men were mad because they didn't have jobs anymore. Why didn't Coke want to be here anymore? Before I really understood any of the rest of what was happening, I remember thinking that and being pissed. Pretty much immediately, there were campaigns launched to boycott Coke in Newfoundland, at least around town. It was no big deal for us because the Royal House was always Pepsi country, but a patriotic wave kind of washed over Newfoundland, again, at least the Avalon Peninsula. A few huge anomalies, like places like McDonald's come to mind, stuck with Coke, but it became very, very difficult to find an independent restaurant that offered Coke. If you ordered a rum and Coke on George Street, you were probably getting a Palm Breeze and Pepsi. Pepsi was produced and bottled in St. John's by an independent franchise of PepsiCo. It probably wasn't called PepsiCo in 1991, but I digress. And that franchise still operates here today. The bottling plant in St. John's, of course, is the Browning Harvey plant, a family-owned plant that employs somewhere around 200 Newfoundlanders to this very day, located up around Rope Walk Lane. So that's basically why you find Pepsi at most restaurants in St. John's, in the St. John's area, to this very day. I don't even really drink Pepsi that much. I do prefer it to Coke, I guess, if I had to choose. It's not about that. I don't really care about Pepsi versus Coke, but I just think it's a pretty cool story that we can pinpoint a specific moment of time and say this is when this became crystal clear. It's one of those situations that isn't really a great mystery. When Coca-Cola pulled their operation out of Newfoundland, they killed a bunch of good jobs at a time when Newfoundlanders were very worried about the future. You can still find old message boards online where people who were directly involved in the mass layoff talk about the heartlessness of the way they were let go and the absence of any support from this gigantic corporation, even for people who built a career working at that plant for years before being told they don't have a job anymore. I'm not cheerleading for Browning Harvey here. I don't know much about them, but they did keep their operation going when Coke decided not to. They were already in a pretty good position in the Newfoundland market, but they filled in whatever gap existed in 1991, and they haven't let go since. Do you think Coca-Cola really gives a crap about losing a market roughly equivalent in size to Des Moines, Iowa? I mean, we're basically just a rounding error to them. But more importantly, in my opinion anyway, many Newfoundlanders came together to support other Newfoundlanders who got screwed by the greedy corporation that, despite running a reportedly profitable operation, felt that they could save a few bucks by shutting down their plant in Newfoundland. Even to this day, nearly 35 years later, Newfoundlanders haven't really gone back to Coke in any kind of major way. The footage in this video has nothing to do with the story I just told. I know that, and I don't care. I just wanted to share some pretty images of a pretty town and attach that to a story that makes me feel proud to be a Newfoundlander. I hope this little video helps remind us of a time when we all came together to support one another in the face of pointless greed.